Let me begin by saying that in sharing this story, I've changed the names of the individuals involved to protect their privacy. These are just placeholders to make it easier for you to follow along. The real names remain confidential, as they should in matters like this. But the events I'm about to recount are based on a true account that came to my attention through my work as an exorcist for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. It's a reminder of how the evil one can infiltrate even the most modern, successful lives, preying on our weaknesses like greed. This happened back in 2007 in San Francisco, California, a city buzzing with innovation and ambition. Picture this: San Francisco in the spring of that year, the Golden Gate Bridge gleaming under the California sun, tech startups sprouting up everywhere like wildflowers after a rain. Amid all that energy lived a man I'll call Victor Lang. He was 42 years old, tall and sharp-dressed, always in those expensive suits that screamed success. Victor was the CEO of a software company called TechForge, specializing in financial management tools programs that help businesses track their money, balance their books, that sort of thing. His office was right in the heart of the city, and he had this penthouse apartment on Market Street overlooking the bay. From up there, you could see the ferries cutting through the water, the fog rolling in like a blanket over the hills. It was the kind of place that cost a fortune, but Victor had earned it through sheer drive and those razor-sharp negotiation skills of his. He dreamed big, wanted to take TechForge global, make it the next big name in Silicon Valley. Victor wasn't alone in this life of luxury. He had a wife, Elena, who was 40 at the time. She was a talented interior designer with long brown hair and a real passion for collecting modern art. Elena handled the home front, organizing their social calendar, throwing these elegant dinner parties where tech executives and artists mingled over wine and canapes. She made their penthouse feel like a gallery itself: sleek furniture, abstract paintings on the walls, everything just so. And then there was their daughter, Sophia, 12 years old and bright as a button. Sophia was one of those kids who loved learning, especially piano. She'd practice for hours on the grand piano in the living room, her little fingers flying over the keys. Often, she'd tag along with her mom to art galleries downtown, soaking up the culture, dreaming of maybe becoming an artist herself one day. The family attended services at Grace Cathedral, that beautiful Episcopal church up on Nob Hill. It's one of those grand places with towering spires and stained glass windows that catch the light just right. They went to charity events there, fundraisers for local causes, galas with auctions and speeches. Victor donated generously, but if I'm being honest, and I always try to be, he saw it more as a business tool than anything spiritual, building the image, he'd call it, a way to network, to rub shoulders with influential people who might invest in TechForge. Faith for him was secondary. It was about the optics, the connections. Elena and Sophia enjoyed it more genuinely, finding peace in the rituals, the community. But Victor, he was all about the bottom line. That spring, something shifted. Victor attended an auction in Chinatown, one of those bustling events where antiques from all over the world get bid on under bright lights. The streets outside were alive with the smell of dim sum and the chatter of vendors, red lanterns swaying in the breeze. Inside the auction house, amid jade statues and porcelain vases, Victor spotted this antique quill pen. It was from the 19th century, a feather quill with a silver handle engraved with these intricate, almost otherworldly patterns, swirls, and symbols that looked like they could tell a story if you stared long enough. The catalog said it once belonged to a prominent financier back in the 1800s, a man who'd made and lost fortunes in the gold rush era. Victor, ever the collector of quirky items that might impress clients, bid on it and won. Paid a pretty penny, several $1,000s, but he figured it was worth it for the novelty. He brought it home that evening, showed it off to Elena over dinner. "Look at this beauty," he said, holding it up like a trophy. Sophia thought it was cool, asked if she could try writing with it. Elena smiled, but there was something about the pen that felt off to her, maybe the weight of it, or the way the silver caught the light. Victor laughed it off, dipped it in ink, and practiced his signature on a napkin. The next day, he took it to the office. TechForge was on the cusp of a big deal, a potential investor ready to pump millions into the company for expansion. Victor, in a moment of whimsy, used the quill to sign the contract. Ink flowed smoothly, black and bold on the paper. The deal closed seamlessly, and within weeks, checks started rolling in. Millions of dollars, enough to skyrocket the company's value, hire more staff, even talk about going public. But that night, after the celebrations died down, Victor had a dream. Or maybe it was more like a nightmare, though it didn't feel terrifying at first. In the dream, he was back in his office, signing endless contracts. The quill in his hand started leaking ink, not just dripping, but flowing like blood, thick and red, pooling on the desk. And as it spread, he heard a whisper, low and insistent, like the rustle of dollar bills being counted. "I will make you wealthy beyond measure," it said, "but in exchange your soul will bankrupt." Victor woke up in a cold sweat, the penthouse silent except for the distant hum of the city below. He shook it off as stress. After all, closing a multi-million-dollar deal could rattle anyone. But deep down, something stirred. The pen sat on his nightstand, gleaming innocently in the moonlight, filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. As the days turned into weeks, TechForge exploded. Contracts poured in from all over New York firms, European banks, even some Asian investors sniffing around. The stock, if you could call the private shares that shot up in value. Victor was featured in Forbes magazine as the new tech star on the rise. He bought a luxury car, a sleek black Mercedes that purred like a contented cat on the winding roads of the Bay Area. Parties at the penthouse became legendary catered affairs with champagne flowing and deals being whispered in corners. Elena redesigned the living room to accommodate more guests, splurging on new art pieces that cost 5 figures each. Sophia got a new piano teacher, one of the best in the city, and started entering competitions. Yet, amid the success, odd things began to happen. The quill, which Victor kept in his desk drawer at work, would sometimes leak ink on its own. He'd open the drawer to find black stains on important documents, but when he'd check, the numbers in the ledgers looked off. Only to him, though. Expenses inflated, revenues deflated in ways that didn't make sense, but when he pointed out to his accountants, they'd see nothing wrong. "Must be the light," they'd say, or "long day, boss." Victor started cutting corners to boost profits, slashing employee salaries here, delaying bonuses there. It wasn't like him. He'd always prided himself on fair treatment. But now, greed crept in, subtle at first, like fog over the bay. One afternoon in the boardroom, during a meeting about quarterly projections, Victor felt a tremor. His hand gripped the table so hard, his knuckles turned white. His body shook, and when he spoke, his voice wasn't his own. It was deeper, resonant, like the clink of coins in a vault. "I am Mammon," it said, echoing through the room. The board members stared, thinking it was a joke. But Victor's eyes glazed over, and he continued in that voice, "Lord of wealth, master of riches." Mammon, as you might know from the Gospel of Matthew in the Bible, is the demon of greed, the one who tempts us to serve money instead of God. In Scripture, Jesus warns, "You cannot serve both God and Mammon." This entity, once an angel of abundance, fell from grace, cast out for wanting to dominate humanity's treasures. Now, it sought vessels, ambitious souls like Victor's, to turn prosperity into a curse. Through Victor, Mammon revealed its history. Bound to that quill by the desperate financier from the 19th century, a man who'd summoned it in a ritual for eternal wealth, only to end up bankrupt and suicidal, jumping from a San Francisco cliff into the icy waters below. The pen had passed through hands over the decades, each owner tasting fleeting fortune before ruin. Victor snapped out of it moments later, laughing it off as a brain fart from too much coffee. But Elena, when he told her that evening over dinner in their penthouse with the city lights twinkling like stars below, saw the fear in his eyes. She suggested seeing a doctor, but Victor brushed it aside. "Just stress," he said. Sophia, overhearing, started keeping a journal, noting her dad's weird money talks. As summer approached, the changes deepened. Victor dreamed of endless treasures, gold bars stacking to the ceiling, bank accounts swelling like balloons. But in waking hours, the greed took hold. He'd hoard small things, extra change in his pockets, receipts he'd scrutinize for pennies. At work, he'd push for shady deals, ones that skirted ethics to maximize gains. The pen, now a constant companion, seemed to pulse with life. Ink blots appeared in shapes, coins, dollar signs that only Victor noticed. Elena found him one night in the study, staring at financial reports, muttering about infinite profits. She touched his shoulder, and he whirled around, eyes wild. "We need more," he snarled, then blinked, apologizing profusely. The family dynamic shifted subtly. Elena, influenced perhaps by the atmosphere, began spending recklessly on art pieces that drained their savings faster than she admitted. Sophia's piano lessons continued, but she played with less joy, sensing the tension. At Grace Cathedral, their attendance waned. Victor claimed he was too busy, but really the whispers in his head mocked the sermons on humility. One Sunday, during a charity auction at the church, Victor bid aggressively on a worthless trinket, driven by an urge he couldn't explain. That night, the dream returned. Blood, ink flooding the penthouse, drowning everything in red, the voice promising riches if he'd just surrender a little more. By midsummer, Tech Forge was a powerhouse, but cracks showed. Employees grumbled about pay cuts, some quitting in frustration. Lawsuits loomed from partners who felt shortchanged. Victor, in private, conversed with the voice Mammon learning its lore. It spoke of ancient times, of tempting kings and merchants, of being exiled by God for perverting abundance into avarice. "I give what you crave," it hissed, "but the price is your essence." Victor confided in no one, but Elena noticed the weight loss, the sleepless nights. She booked an appointment with Dr. Karen Weiss, a psychiatrist at San Francisco General Hospital, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense approach to work-related stress disorders. The session started innocently enough. Dr. Weiss diagnosed occupational burnout, prescribed some pills to ease the anxiety, but they didn't touch the core. Victor swallowed them dutifully, but the voice laughed. Sophia, in her journal, drew pictures of her dad with money eyes, bags of cash where his pupils should be. The penthouse, once a haven, felt heavier, air-thick with metallic scent, like old coins. Money clips and wallets seemed to multiply in drawers, stacking oddly as if arranged by unseen hands. This was just the beginning, the setup for what would become a full-blown battle against the forces of darkness. As an exorcist, I've seen how demons like Mammon exploit our modern idols: wealth, success, power. They don't always come with horns and fire. Sometimes it's a whisper in the boardroom, a dream in the night. But God is greater, always. In the next part, I'll tell you how the possession deepened, pulling in those around him. As we move deeper into this account, you'll see how the possession took root, spreading like a shadow across Victor's life and those closest to him. By late summer of that year, the changes in Victor weren't just internal whispers anymore. They manifested in ways that unsettled everyone around him. Mammon, that ancient deceiver from the scriptures, wasn't content with subtle temptations. It began to flex its influence, turning prosperity into a poison that seeped into every corner of the Lang household and beyond. Elena noticed it first in the small things. Victor, who had always been a generous tipper at their favorite Italian spot in North Beach, started haggling over pennies with the waitstaff. "Every dollar counts," he'd mutter, his eyes darting as if calculating invisible ledgers. At home, the penthouse began to feel claustrophobic despite its sprawling views. Stacks of financial reports piled up on the coffee table, unread but somehow multiplying overnight. Elena would tidy them away, only to find them rearranged the next morning, pages marked with ink blots that looked like grasping hands. She confided in a friend over coffee one morning at a cafe overlooking the Embarcadero, the salty Bay Air, doing little to ease her worry. "He's not himself," she said. "It's like money has become his god." Sophia, bless her young heart, picked up on it too. At 12, she was perceptive beyond her years. Her piano practices, once a joyful escape, turned tense. Victor would sit in the living room, listening not to the music, but interrupting with questions about costs. How much were the lessons running them? Why not sell some of Elena's art to fund better equipment? Sophia started drawing in her journal sketches of her father with chains of gold coins wrapped around his neck, pulling him down. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows through the windows, She approached him hesitantly. "Dad, are you okay? You talk to yourself a lot now." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just business, kiddo. One day, you'll understand the world's made of opportunities, and we've got to grab them all." At Tech Forge, the rot spread faster. Employees whispered in the break room about the new Victor. Paychecks arrived late, benefits trimmed without explanation. One programmer, a young guy fresh out of Stanford, confronted him in a team meeting. "This isn't right, Victor. We're the ones building this company." Victor's response came in that altered voice again, low, metallic, like quarters clinking in a slot machine. "Loyalty is rewarded, but greed is the engine." The room fell silent. Later, that employee found his desk cleared out, severance check waiting generous, but with a non-disclosure agreement thicker than a phone book. Rumors flew, embezzlement in the ranks, fudged numbers in reports. Partners started pulling back, sensing something off in the deals. Victor pushed contracts that promised the moon but hid clauses like bear traps. Mammon reveled in it all. Through Victor, it summoned a companion entity, one drawn from the old Catholic lore on the deadly sins. I'll call it avarice, though names like these are just labels for the manifestations of evil. Avarice wasn't a separate demon, but an extension of Mammon's power, a twisted echo born from humanity's endless hunger. In the traditions I've studied and dealt with in my ministry, such spirits amplify the host's flaws, turning minor vices into cataclysms. Avarice whispered of forgotten treasures, urging Victor to dig into old investments, resurrect failed ventures at any cost. One night, in the penthouse study with its mahogany desk and bay view windows, fogged by evening mist, Victor sat alone, quill in hand. The pen trembled, ink flowing unbidden onto blank paper, forming words: "Claim what is yours, or lose it forever." The family fractures deepened that fall. Elena's spending spiraled not out of her own greed at first, but as if infected. She'd browse galleries in Soma, snapping up sculptures and paintings that strained their credit cards. "We deserve this," she'd tell herself, echoing Victor's new mantra. But guilt gnawed at her. She'd wake from dreams of drowning in receipts, the paper cutting like knives. Sophia retreated into her music, practicing late into the night, the notes of Chopin filling the air like a barrier against the growing discord. Arguments erupted over dinner, simple things like takeout from Chinatown escalating into shouts about finances. "You're selling your soul for this," Elena cried one evening, slamming a fork down. Victor's eyes flashed, and for a split second his voice boomed with Mammon's timbre. "Souls are cheap. Wealth endures." The physical signs escalated too, making it impossible to ignore. Coins would appear in odd places, pockets of clothes unworn, under pillows, even in the refrigerator among the organic produce Elena favored. The air in the penthouse carried a persistent metallic tang, like blood mixed with rust. Victor began sleepwalking, gathering shiny objects, watches, cufflinks, even loose change from the streets below. Elena found him one dawn, standing at the window, arms laden with gold jewelry from her collection, murmuring incantations about eternal profit. She shook him awake, tears streaming. "This isn't you, Victor. We need help." That's when she turned to the professionals beyond medicine. Dr. Weiss's sessions continued, but the psychiatrist sensed something deeper than burnout. "There are cultural elements here," she noted in her reports, referencing Victor's ramblings about biblical figures. Pills dulled the edges, but the voice persisted. Elena, raised in a loosely Catholic family, remembered stories from her grandmother about possessions. Desperate, she reached out to Father Robert Hayes at Grace Cathedral. Father Hayes, 52 and seasoned from years ministering to the addicted and lost in the Bay Area, had that calm, convincing presence, graying hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a voice like warm gravel. He'd seen his share of troubles, overdoses in the Tenderloin, broken families in the Mission District. But possessions? Those were rarer, yet he knew the signs from seminary training. Elena met him in the cathedral's nave, sunlight filtering through the labyrinth-patterned floor. "My husband, he's changed. Talks like someone else, about money as if it's alive." Father Hayes listened, nodding gravely. He visited the penthouse that week under the guise of a pastoral call. Victor greeted him cordially at first, But as they sat in the living room with Sophia playing softly in the background, the quill on the side table rattled. Victor's face contorted, and avarice spoke through him. Charity is for fools. Hoard and thrive. Father Hayes felt the chill, the unnatural pressure in the room. He blessed the space quietly, sprinkling holy water from a vial, watching Victor flinch as if burned. Back at the cathedral, Father Hayes consulted the archives and reached out to Archbishop George Hugh Niederauer of the San Francisco Archdiocese. The Archbishop, a wise shepherd with a reputation for prudence, reviewed the reports, Victor's episodes, the family's testimonies, even Dr. Weiss's notes suggesting dissociative identity with religious delusions. Permission for an exorcism isn't granted lightly in my experience. It requires discernment, ruling out mental illness first. But the signs aligned: aversion to sacred objects, knowledge beyond the host, Mammon reciting obscure financial histories from centuries past, and the physical anomalies. Approval came swiftly, with guidelines: involve a team, document everything, prioritize prayer. As autumn leaves turned the parks golden, the preparations began. Father Hayes assembled a small group, himself as led, Sister Lucia Ramirez, a 44-year-old nun from Mexico with expertise in theological economics. She'd written papers on how faith intersects with wealth, drawing from liberation theology. Dr. Weiss joined as observer, skeptical but open, her scientific mind a counterbalance. Elena and Sophia were included for support, their love a weapon against the darkness. The penthouse, once a symbol of achievement, would become the battlefield, its modern lines and glass walls contrasting the ancient rite. The first session hit like a storm. In December, with holiday lights twinkling across the city, they gathered in the living room. Victor was secured to a leather armchair, not with chains, but soft restraints for safety. The TV flickered with stock tickers in the background, symbols dancing like taunts. Father Hayes began with prayers, the rite of exorcism adapted for the Episcopal context but rooted in Catholic tradition. In the name of Jesus Christ, he intoned, crucifix raised. Mammon laughed through Victor. Your God can't bankrupt me. Illusions followed visions of money raining from the ceiling, tempting the teen. Elena wept as avarice whispered of hidden debts, stirring old fears. Sister Lucia countered with logic, poring over Tech Forge's books at a side table. True wealth comes from God, not deceit, she declared, recalculating figures aloud to expose the lies. Sophia, brave little one, played Ave Maria on the piano, the melody piercing the chaos like light through fog. Victor convulsed, vomiting rusted pennies that clattered to the floor. The quill shattered in its case, shards flying. But the entities held fast, retreating only slightly as the session ended at dawn. These battles wore on through the winter, each one peeling back layers of the infestation. Mammon revealed more of its nature, how it had ensnared tycoons through history, from Roman merchants to Wall Street barons, always promising abundance while devouring souls. Avarice fed on the fallout, turning allies into thieves indeed. TechForge faced internal thefts, employees suddenly embezzling under inexplicable urges. Lawsuits mounted, stock plummeted 30% in a week. Victor's body suffered. Weight loss, bruises from unseen struggles, voices echoing in his head during lulls. One foggy night, as mist shrouded the Golden Gate, avarice prophesied economic doom hints of the coming 2008 crash, whispered as bait. Dr. Weiss, armed with market data on her laptop, rebutted, prosperity from God is sustainable. Yours is illusion. Father Hayes pressed on, reading from Matthew, no one can serve two masters. The room shook, furniture vibrating, but faith held. By New Year's Eve, exhaustion set in, but so did hope. Victor glimpsed clarity in moments, begging for release. The final rite dawned on January 1st, 2008, a new beginning. As fireworks echoed faintly from the bay, the team redoubled prayers. Mammon pleaded, keep me and riches eternal. But Victor, drawing strength from his family, roared, no God is my true treasure. A gale swept through, cold and cleansing, expelling the spirits. The quill's remnants crumbled to dust. In the aftermath, healing began. Tech Forge stabilized under ethical reforms. Victor donated profits to charities, mending bridges. Elena redesigned church spaces pro bono. Sophia's music flourished. Her father, now her biggest fan. Father Hayes documented it as a testament. God's riches surpass any earthly greed. As I reflect on this, remember evil preys on our ambitions, but Christ conquers all. In the next telling, we'll explore the lessons deeper. Now, let's delve into the heart of the struggle, where the darkness truly tested the family's resolve, and where faith became their anchor in the storm. As winter tightened its grip on San Francisco that year, with chill winds whipping off the Pacific and holiday decorations lighting up the streets like defiant beacons, the possession evolved from isolated incidents into a relentless siege. Mammon and its shadowy ally avarice didn't just haunt Victor, they wove a web that ensnared the entire household, turning everyday moments into battles for the soul. I've witnessed this pattern in my own cases. Evil doesn't strike alone, it multiplies, feeding on fear and division to isolate its prey. By early December, the penthouse had transformed from a sleek sanctuary into something oppressive, almost alive with malice. The metallic odor lingered constantly now, seeping into fabrics and food. Elena would open the refrigerator to find milk soured overnight, bottles clinking as if shifted by invisible fingers. Lights flickered without reason, bulbs bursting in showers of glass during arguments. Victor's sleepwalking escalated. Elena awoke multiple times to find him in the kitchen, arranging silverware into intricate patterns resembling stock charts, his lips moving silently in calculations of phantom gains. One particularly foggy morning, as the city below vanished in a white haze, she discovered him at the balcony railing, clutching a handful of gold coins he'd somehow acquired, perhaps pilfered from a downtown pawn shop in his trance. "More," he whispered hoarsely, eyes unseeing. "We must have more." She pulled him inside, heart pounding, and locked the doors, but the chill followed. Sophia's world crumbled in subtler ways, the innocence of childhood clashing with the unnatural. Her schoolwork suffered. Teachers at her private academy in Pacific Heights noted her distraction. Sketches of monstrous figures with money bag heads filling her notebooks instead of math problems. At home, the piano became her refuge, but even that was tainted. Avarice would mimic notes during her practices, twisting melodies into discordant jangles that echoed through the vents. One afternoon, returning from a gallery visit with Elena, Sophia found her room rearranged, toys and books stacked like financial portfolios, her piggy bank emptied and coins lined up in rows on the floor. "Dad did this," she told her mother tearfully. "He said it's for our future empire." Elena hugged her tight, but inside, panic brewed. She started attending daily mass at a nearby chapel, seeking solace in the quiet pews, rosary beads clicking like a lifeline. The infection spread outward, beyond the family walls. At Tech Forge's offices in the financial district, chaos reigned. Desks overflowed with unexplained currency, dollar bills tucked into keyboards, quarters spilling from drawers. Employees, once loyal, turned suspicious and self-serving. Petty theft surged, from office supplies to proprietary code leaked to competitors. One executive assistant, a reliable woman in her 30s, confessed to Elena over a hushed phone call. "It's like a fever in the air. People are hoarding, lying about expenses. And Victor, he approves it all with that eerie smile." Lawsuits piled up like autumn leaves, former partners claiming fraud in contracts Victor had signed under duress from the voices, clauses hidden like venom in fine print. Stock values tanked further, dipping another 20% amid whispers of insider trading. Victor, in meetings, would lapse into trances, quoting archaic market lore from eras he couldn't possibly know. Details of the 1869 Black Friday gold scandal, recited verbatim as if he'd been there. Mammon delighted in the unraveling, using Victor as a mouthpiece to boast of its conquests. During one family dinner takeout, sushi gone cold on the table, it seized control mid-bite. Victor's fork clattered down, his posture straightening unnaturally. "I have toppled empires," the voice rumbled, vibrating the crystal glasses. "From Judas's silver to modern moguls, all bow to me." Avarice chimed in with whispers. promising buried fortunes if they'd just dig deeper into debt. Elena, drawing on memories of her grandmother's folk tales from rural Spain, splashed holy water from a bottle she'd smuggled home. Victor recoiled, skin blistering faintly, but the episode passed with him collapsing in exhaustion. Sophia, wide-eyed, fled to her room, blasting hymns on her iPod to drown out the echoes. Father Hayes intensified his involvement, visiting twice weekly now. His presence brought temporary relief. He'd anoint doorways with blessed oil, reciting psalms that seemed to clear the air. But the entities fought back viciously. During one session in the study, as rain lashed the windows overlooking Alcatraz's distant silhouette, avarice manifested illusions, visions of opulent mansions flashing before their eyes, tempting Elena with promises of endless art collections. Take it, it urged through Victor's gritted teeth, or watch it all crumble. Father Hayes countered with relics, a fragment of the true cross from his collection, pressing it to Victor's forehead. The reaction was explosive. Victor thrashed, shouting obscenities in languages he didn't know, Latin curses mixed with Wall Street jargon. Sister Lucia, ever the scholar, documented it all in a leather-bound journal, cross-referencing with Vatican texts on demonic hierarchies. These are not mere hallucinations, she told the group firmly. They are deliberate deceptions perverting God's gift of abundance. Dr. Weiss, initially dubious, found herself drawn deeper. Her notes evolved from psychological analyses to observations of the inexplicable, thermometers dropping 20 degrees in Victor's presence, electromagnetic readings spiking on her equipment. If this is mental, she confided to Elena one evening over herbal tea in the kitchen, it's unlike anything in the DSM. She began attending the rites voluntarily, blending therapy techniques with prayer, guiding Victor through breathing exercises interspersed with invocations. Yet doubts lingered. One night, after a grueling session where Victor vomited more rusted metal scraps, she questioned Father Hayes privately. How do we know this isn't amplifying his delusion? The priest, weary but resolute, replied, faith isn't about certainty, it's about confronting evil head-on. We've ruled out the medical, now we trust in the divine. The toll on Elena was profound. Sleepless nights left her gaunt, her design work suffering as clients complained of delayed projects. She pawned jewelry to cover mounting bills, the irony biting deep selling luxuries to fight the greed that birthed them. Friends distanced themselves, sensing the family's bad luck. Isolation crept in, but so did unexpected allies. Parishioners from Grace Cathedral formed a prayer chain, holding vigils in the nave, candles flickering like stars against the demonic night. Sophia joined them sometimes, her small voice reciting the Lord's Prayer with a purity that moved the congregation. As Christmas approached, the confrontations peaked. Decorations hung limply in the penthouse, untouched by holiday cheer. On Christmas Eve, amid carols drifting from Union Square below, Mammon unleashed a barrage. Furniture levitated slightly, slamming down with thuds that shook the building. Victor, bound loosely for safety, prophesied market crashes in vivid detail, foreshadowing the housing bubble's burst mere months away. See my power, it gloated. Avarice amplified the fear, whispering of family ruin if they persisted. But the team held firm. Father Hayes led a midnight mass in the living room, Eucharist consecrated on a makeshift altar. As bread broke, Victor screamed, body arching, yet a flicker of his true self emerged, tears streaming as he mouthed, "Help me." These ordeals forged unbreakable bonds. Elena and Sophia grew closer, sharing stories of better times, vacations in Napa Valley, lazy Sundays at the Exploratorium. Victor, in lucid intervals, expressed remorse. I chased shadows, forgot what matters. The entities weakened gradually, their taunts growing desperate. By late December, physical evidence mounted. The quill's fragments, collected in a blessed box, smoked faintly when prayed over. Coins vanished as mysteriously as they'd appeared. Debts inexplicably eased through anonymous donations, perhaps divine intervention or stirred consciences. This phase taught me, in reflecting on similar cases, how possession isn't just individual, it's communal warfare. Evil thrives on division, but unity in Christ dismantles it. The Lang story shows that even in a city of innovation and excess, ancient truths prevail. In the coming part, we'll witness the climax of the exorcism, where light pierced the deepest dark. As the new year loomed closer, with San Francisco's skyline aglow in festive illuminations that mocked the shadows within the Lang penthouse, the exorcism rites intensified into a grueling marathon of spiritual combat. What had begun as probing sessions now morphed into all-out warfare, where every prayer uttered was a strike against the entrenched forces of greed. In my years as an exorcist, I've learned that demons like Mammon don't yield easily. They cling with the tenacity of rust on iron, exploiting every crack in resolve. But here, the team's unity began to shine through, turning desperation into determination. January's first weeks brought bitter cold snaps, temperatures dipping into the low 40s Fahrenheit, frost etching patterns on the bay-facing windows like mocking filigrees of wealth. The rites shifted to nightly vigils, the living room repurposed as a chapel amid luxury, velvet couches pushed aside for prayer mats, candles from the cathedral casting flickering light on modern art that now seemed garish in the holy context. Father Hayes, his voice steady despite fatigue lines etching his face, led with the authority of one who'd stared down urban despair before. He'd arrived bundled in a wool coat, carrying a satchel of sacramentals, blessed salt, incense from Jerusalem, a well-worn Bible marked at passages on stewardship and humility. Victor's condition worsened before improving, a common tactic of the infernal to discourage. His body, once athletic from weekend hikes in Marin County, grew emaciated, skin sallow under the penthouse's recessed lighting. During lulls, he'd whisper confessions to Elena. I invited this in, chasing illusions of control. But when possessed, Mammon surged forth with renewed vigor, manipulating the environment in ways that defied physics. One evening, as cable cars clanged faintly below on the streets, the stock ticker on a muted TV screen warped numbers, inflating grotesquely before crashing to zeros. Behold my domain, the voice boomed from Victor's throat, causing the room's temperature to plummet, breath visible in puffs. Avarice, ever the insidious partner, conjured auditory hallucinations, the jingle of phantom cash registers echoing in the halls, luring Sophia from her bedroom where she'd huddle with headphones playing Gregorian chants. Sister Lucia's role proved pivotal in these escalations, drawing from her background in Mexico's impoverished communities where she'd seen greed corrupt even the devout. She wielded intellect as a weapon. Seated at a folding table laden with ledgers and laptops, she'd dissect TechForge's financials during rites, exposing discrepancies aloud. Here, a fabricated profit margin illusion, not reality, she'd declare, her accent clipping words like shears through deceit. When Mammon retorted through Victor, claiming dominion over global markets, she'd counter with quotes from papal encyclicals on ethical economics. Laudato Si reminds us, wealth serves humanity, not enslaves it. This blend of theology and practicality irked the entities. Victor would convulse, spitting ink like bile that stained the Persian rug, forcing Elena to scrub it away with blessed water that sizzled on contact. Dr. Weiss, evolving from skeptic to ally, integrated her expertise in novel ways. Armed with biofeedback devices, heart rate monitors, EEG caps, she tracked Victor's vitals during possessions. Spikes and delta waves here, correlating with the voice shifts, she'd note, her tablet screen glowing in the dim light. One breakthrough came mid-January during a rite interrupted by a power outage citywide, blamed on a storm, but suspiciously timed. In the candlelit gloom, avarice whispered temptations tailored to each. To Father Hayes, visions of untapped church funds. To Elena, endless shopping sprees. To Sophia, a world of gadgets without cost. Dr. Weiss, unflinching, used grounding techniques. Focus on your breath. Victor, inhale truth, exhale lies. Combined with Hayes' adjurations, it forced a revelation Mammon admitted its fear of unity. Divided, you fall. Together, you annoy. Sophia's contributions, though childlike, carried profound weight. At 12, her faith was unscarred, pure as spring water. She'd composed simple prayers on notebook paper, reading them aloud. Lord, take away the money monster from Daddy. During one intense session, as Victor thrashed against restraints, she improvised on the piano a medley of hymns like Be Thou My Vision, notes soaring above the demonic snarls. The music seemed to weaken avarice. Victor's body slackened, and for moments his own voice emerged, pleading, "Fight for me." Elena, drawing strength from this, joined in song, her soprano blending with Sophia's treble, creating a harmony that filled the space like incense smoke. External pressures mounted, testing the group's endurance. TechForge teetered on collapsed board members, demanding Victor's resignation via urgent emails that pinged incessantly on his phone, ignored amid the rites. Creditors called, debts from Elena's earlier sprees ballooning with interest. Anonymous tips to regulators hinted at audits, perhaps stirred by disgruntled ex-employees under lingering influence. Father Hayes fielded calls from the Archdiocese, updating Archbishop Niederauer on progress. Signs of weakening, but resistance fierce. Support came unexpectedly, a network of interfaith clergy, including a rabbi from a nearby synagogue and a Buddhist monk from the Zen Center, offering prayers from afar, emphasizing greed's universal peril. In late January, a pivotal confrontation unfolded during a rite coinciding with a lunar eclipse, the moon's reddish hue visible through the windows like a blood moon omen. Mammon, sensing defeat's approach, unleashed a barrage of historical taunts, recounting how it had influenced the tulip mania in 17th century Holland, the South Sea bubble, even whispers in ears during the dot-com bust. "I endure through eras," it growled. Avarice amplified with personal jabs, revealing hidden family secrets, like a distant relative's bankruptcy, to sow doubt. But the team parried. Hayes with exorcism commands, Lucia with scriptural economics from Proverbs, wealth gained hastily, will dwindle Weiss with data, debunking the illusions, showing market charts on her screen. Bubbles burst. Faith endures. Victor's lucidity increased incrementally. In post-rite debriefs over simple meals of soup and bread, Elena insisting on humility, he'd share glimpses. It feels like chains loosening. Physical artifacts of the possession diminished, no more spontaneous coin appearances, the metallic scent fading to a memory. Yet dangers lurked one night. Victor attempted to flee during a trance, heading for the elevator as if drawn to the financial district's lights. Sophia, alert, blocked him with a crucifix necklace, her small frame a barrier of courage. This period underscored a truth I've seen repeatedly. Exorcism isn't spectacle, it's perseverance, a grinding down of evil through consistent grace. The Lang's ordeal highlighted how modern vices like unchecked ambition invite ancient foes, but also how community and sacrament reclaim what's lost. As February dawned, with hints of spring and blooming cherry trees along the Embarcadero, the stage set for resolution. The entity's grip faltered, paving the way for the final liberation that would restore not just Victor, but the family's very foundation in something greater than gold. In the concluding reflection, we'll see how light triumphed fully, with the dawn of February breaking over the Bay Area, bringing with it the first tentative blooms of crocuses in the parks and a softening of the winter's edge. The Lang family's ordeal reached its merciful crescendo. In my ministry, I've come to understand that the path to deliverance isn't a sudden flash of divine intervention, though God can work that way, but more often a culmination of persistent, humble efforts. Evil clings like a debtor to a loan, but faith, applied steadily, erodes its hold until nothing remains but the freedom Christ promises. For Victor, Elena, and Sophia, that freedom arrived not in spectacle, but in the quiet victory of reclaimed lives. The final rites unfolded over several days in early February as the city shook off holiday remnants and returned to its rhythmic hum of cable cars and commuter ferries. Father Hayes, sensing the entity's weakening resolve from prior sessions, scheduled intensive prayers, spacing them to allow recovery while maintaining pressure. The penthouse, stripped now of excess, Elena had sold off superfluous art to simplify, donating proceeds to the cathedral's outreach, served as a stark arena. Minimalist furnishings, a crucifix on the wall, and a small altar with blessed candles created an atmosphere of solemn focus, far removed from the opulent chaos of months past. Victor's manifestations grew erratic, a sign of desperation in the demonic realm. Mammon, once boastful, now resorted to pleas laced with deception. During one afternoon rite, as sunlight slanted through the blinds, casting golden bars on the floor, the voice whimpered from his lips, "Abandon this folly, embrace me, and fortunes will multiply anew." Avarice echoed with faint echoes of lost opportunities, conjuring fleeting sense of fresh minted bills to tempt the senses. But the team, fortified by experience, remained unmoved. Sister Lucia, her notes now a thick sheaf of insights, led reflections on gospel parables, the rich young man, the talents entrusted, reminding all that true stewardship honors God, not self. Wealth is a tool, she'd say calmly, not a tyrant. Dr. Weiss, fully committed now, monitored with clinical precision, her devices charting the subsidence of anomalous readings, heart rate stabilizing, brain waves normalizing during invocations. The data supports progress, she'd report, bridging science and spirit in a way that bolstered morale. Sophia, maturing through the fire, contributed drawings, simple sketches of light, overcoming shadows that they pinned around the room as visual prayers. Elena, her hands clasped in constant supplication, shared scriptures she'd memorized, passages from James on resisting the devil, who flees before the faithful. The breakthrough came on a crisp Sunday morning, the kind where church bells peal clearly across the neighborhoods. Gathered for what would be the concluding rite, Father Hayes began with the Litany of Saints, voices rising in unison. Victor, seated calmly at first, tensed as the prayers deepened. Mammon surged one last time, causing a brief tremor, bookshelves rattling, a vase tipping precariously. "You cannot evict eternity," it snarled. Avarice whispered farewells of forgotten greed, stirring a momentary doubt in Victor's eyes. But he, drawing from inner reserves, nurtured by the process, locked gazes with Elena and Sophia. "I choose life," he declared, his own voice breaking through, invoking the Jesus prayer I'd often recommend in such moments. "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner." That invocation acted like a key in a lock. A profound stillness descended, broken only by a sigh of wind through the vents, carrying away the last vestiges of oppression. No dramatic expulsion, just a release, as if chains dissolved into air. Victor slumped forward, then straightened, tears cleansing his face. The quill's dust, swept into a blessed urn earlier, stirred no more. Father Hayes sprinkled holy water one final time, pronouncing the benediction. "Go forth in peace, the Lord be with you." The room warmed, sunlight intensifying as if in affirmation. Recovery wasn't instantaneous, but deliberate, much like rebuilding after a financial crash. Victor spent weeks in quiet reflection, attending counseling with Dr. Weiss to process the psychological scars, lingering anxieties about money, habits of hoarding that needed unlearning. He returned to TechForge gradually, implementing reforms, fair wages reinstated, ethical audits conducted, a portion of profits earmarked for community tech education programs. No more cutting corners, he'd tell his board, his decisions now filtered through prayerful discernment. Elena dove into pro bono work, redesigning spaces for local shelters, finding joy in service over acquisition. Sophia, her piano skills honed through the trials, performed at cathedral events, her music a testament to resilience. The family recommitted to Grace Cathedral, not as a networking venue, but a spiritual home. Victor shared his story privately with Father Hayes, who documented it anonymously for Archdiocesan records, a case study in how modern ambitions can open doors to ancient evils, but also how bishops' oversight and communal prayer close them. They buried the quill's remnants under the Golden Gate Bridge's shadow, a symbolic interment of past follies, the crashing waves a reminder of baptismal renewal. In the years that followed, whispers of the tale circulated in Silicon Valley circles, not as ghost stories, but cautionary lessons. Victor became a mentor to young entrepreneurs, advising on balanced success. Chase dreams, but anchor them in faith. Elena's designs graced nonprofit venues. Sophia pursued music therapy, helping others heal through art. Their penthouse, simplified, hosted Bible studies instead of galas, fostering connections deeper than deals. Reflecting on this account, as I often do with cases that reach me through clerical networks, it underscores a truth I've emphasized in my talks, from university lectures to parish halls. Evil exploits our vulnerabilities, like the lure of unchecked wealth in a faith-fading world. Factors such as societal drifts from church teachings, or even subtle occult curiosities like that antique quill, can invite influences we dismiss as myth. But as an exorcist appointed by my archbishop, trained in Rome's rigorous methods, I've seen that discernment is key, ruling out the natural before addressing the supernatural, always with bishop's mandate, never for profit or show. This isn't about fear-mongering, it's education. Exorcisms, in my experience, rise not from more demons, but from waning spiritual defenses, drug issues, broken relationships, materialism run amok, yet hope prevails. Through persistent prayer, sacraments, and community, God's mercy restores. As in Victor's journey, the real treasure isn't earthly riches, but a soul aligned with Christ. If you're facing shadows, seek your pastor, build faith daily. Remember the words, you cannot serve God and money. In that choice lies true prosperity. And so, this story ends not in darkness, but light, a reminder that no possession is permanent when surrendered to Him who conquers all.